so thankful for all the obstacles that life gave me, because growth happened at every point. And I'm so thankful that cancer came into my life a second time, because it created the multi-dimensional woman that I am. Earlier, I was a single-dimensional, very, very dependent being. And then I realized, phew, there's a whole lot that in one human life you can pack between birth and death. That's the only interval you get.
Welcome everyone to this episode of Different Boat, Same Storm, a video podcast brought by myself, Abhay, Atharv, and Eli, who will be joining us later on in the conversation.
COVID-19 is above and beyond everything else a humanitarian crisis. And DBSS is centered around fostering discussion and perspectives and the innate human experiences that often lie in the shadows of mainstream discourse. Every week, same time, different guest, different boat, same story. This week, we're thrilled to have with us Neelam Kumar. Ma'am, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule and come and have a chat with us today. I'm really happy to have you. And I know that you go by many titles. I've done my research and you do so many things. So I'm going to let you take the floor and introduce yourself to us and the audience.
Thank you so much, Atharv, Eli, and Abhay. It is indeed an honor to be here on your show. So it's good morning to you British Columbian guys, and Atharva and me. Yes, it's going to be a very pleasant night talking on this show. I would first, I don't know how to introduce myself. I just know that I'm many women rolled into one. And I realized that when cancer struck me the second time. And then I realized that there are many women jostling inside me, and they each one wanted expression. So I wear many hats. I'm a life skills coach. I'm the author of 10 best-selling books. And I'm a motivational speaker. And I'm a cancer thriver. So I'm a Pinkathon. I don't know if you know what Pinkathon is, but it is a run, a marathon to support cancer survivors. So I feel very passionately about that. So I'm deeply involved in that. So that's me.
Wow, it's so amazing to hear about not just who you are and what you've done, but really how that all comes together and forms that identity that you have. So I guess to start, I'm very fascinated by your story itself. You were born in Russia, you moved to India. Can you tell us about how those early years really shaped who you are?
So, Abhay, I wasn't born in Russia. I was born in India.
Okay.
And my parents were selected by the government of India to work in the Russian embassy.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's where my childhood was spent. And I call them the strawberry years, because my sister and we did our primary school education there. And it was a child's fairy tale dream to be in a country where studies were without books. We learned from nature. And we ran into the forest with our little baskets to collect strawberries. And that's why I remember all our competitiveness, our math, everything came from those lessons we learned in the forest. Diving into the Black Sea, picking up seashells of every color. We learned how to count, and we learned survival tricks also. So I think we started being very strong, happy individuals when we were there. Unfortunately, Abhay, when I came back to India, I didn't know a word of English. My parents, they put me into a very prestigious convent school where everyone was speaking a strange language. And because I didn't understand it, I became the clown of the whole class. So to cut a long story short, I was bullied. And one day, there's a teacher who actually called me to the blackboard, and she asked me to do something. I could not understand what it was. I totally thought that she was asking me to sing a song. And I I put my heart and soul into singing a lovely song. She asked me for my notebook and she scribbled something in red. And I thought it was a beautiful color. And when I went home, my father told me that it was my destiny written in reading. She had written, "This girl is wood sitting on wood. She will never be able to learn the English language."
Wow.
So I went through very traumatic years, but the end of the tunnel was writing 10 books, bestsellers in the English language. Really, really thankful to the teacher who made me dip into my potential.
Wow. I mean, it's hard for me to fathom going from not speaking the language at all and being ridiculed for it. And just the fact that it happened at such a young age must have led to quite a distaste, if I may put it that way, for those experiences and everything associated with them. Very curious as to what motivated you to pursue the path that you ended up pursuing, because I know that there are a lot of things that happened early on in my life which have shaped me to do and not do some things that I do today. And it can go both ways. So I'm very curious as to what made it go this way.
So life for me has been, if I may say so, quite a horror script. I lost my husband at a very young age. And, you know, when I was broken apart by grief, I noticed there were two tiny children clutching onto my skirts for support. It was a very scary time. And I knew that I could not shed tears for the sake of my children. I had to go forward. And so at that time, I don't know how much you will relate to it, but especially the Canadians, being a widow was a difficult thing in those times, you know, and I was in a small town back of beyond. So it was, I truly wanted to shake off the title of poor widow and to change it to capable professional. So I took up work. In fact, I was working before that, but I worked very hard to climb up a corporate ladder. I was the chief of communications in a male-dominated steel company. So yes, I managed to, I would say, shatter the glass ceiling. And then when I got transferred to Mumbai, which is a very happy, inclusive place, my children grew up here, and that's how I remember that day when I was grieving, and suddenly I discovered I was diagnosed with cancer. And I couldn't even cry. My only worry was my children must not become orphans. So anyway, I got treated. 17 years down the line, when the children had grown up and everything was hunky-dory, I had reached a certain social standing in my male-dominated steel world, and I had decided to leave the company because I wanted to pursue full-time writing. Cancer struck me again. So this time, I decided that the universe was definitely trying to tell me something. And what it was trying to tell me, I had to live to find out. And right on the chemotherapy table itself, I decided to do something very dramatic. It might sound like a Bollywood film script, but I have always been a very a person who gathers a lot of information. I have been an informed patient. I like to learn a lot before going ahead. So all the books I read a lot of classics, The last lecture, he dies. Grit and Grace, she dies. Um, Tuesdays with Worry, he dies. I said, what's happening? I've decided to live. And that's when I discovered to my horror that India had absolutely no happy books on cancer. And by that time, I had decided to view life through the lens of joy and hope. So on the chemotherapy table itself, I wrote my first happy book on cancer, which was called To Cancer with Love, My Journey of Joy. I wrote the script for myself because all I had to do was to follow it. But then I'm very happy to say it was picked up by Hay House, and it helped a lot of people around the world. That gave me a lot of satisfaction. And then more books on cancer followed.
Wow. That's absolutely incredible. Just
Like a Bollywood script.
absolutely. I mean, Eli is actually a filmmaker, so maybe Eli can make a film one day. I mean,
Eli,
we'll talk more about that.
For you. It would be
Absolutely.
so strong, this message.
Absolutely. And I think that's really what I'm getting here, is that the strength that you've displayed just from the very beginning, from, you know, just even the early adverse experiences to everything that you've built up in your life. Can you talk a bit more about really that process of becoming that best-selling author and becoming a motivational speaker, and some of the challenges that you encountered along the way there, and what are some of the biggest joys that you've reaped through those experiences?
What a wonderful question. Um, I'm so thankful for all the obstacles that life gave me, because growth happened at every point. And I'm so thankful that cancer came into my life a second time, because it created the multi-dimensional woman that I am. Earlier, I was a single dimensional, very, very dependent being. And then I realized, too, there's a whole lot that in one human life you can pack between birth and death. That's the only interval you get. Something very beautiful happened to me, Abhay, in 2005, when I was struggling. You know, when you are hit by so many obstacles, it's okay to say obstacles are opportunities, but they really are roadblocks also. You know, your relationships fall apart, your relatives don't, like to talk to you. Being a widow in a small town is a big stigma. And on top of that, a cancerous widow, you know, so that was quite something. So I just worked very hard to shake that label off. But in 2005, what happened is I met a beautiful philosophy, which is Nichiren Buddhism. And that taught me that I could change my karma right here, right now. I do not have to carry the burden of, all the past. Like people were telling me, this is whatever has happened to you is because of past births and the sins from past births. I said, rubbish. I don't believe that. I believe that each person is basically good. So if I activate my Buddhahood, you will definitely behave like a Buddha with me also. Because everyone, Buddhism believes that everyone has Buddhahood inside them. Whether they are criminals love their wife and children. So, we have to concentrate, we have to focus on the good, and good happens. So that is why when I met this life-changing philosophy, I said, this is something that is my cup of tea. It does not believe in rituals. It does not discriminate. It says you can just be. I loved that. And also it taught me to pray for others. And all the strength I got, I don't know whether I'll call it strength. I will call it inner empowerment and realization. At one point, I realized um, I'm not this body. I'm a mortal who has come into this world. for a particular mission. And everyone's mission in this life is to realize their highest potential, which is put out. So I just worked towards helping others and myself and got a whole lot of satisfaction from that.
Wow, wow, wow. That was, I'm loving this conversation so much because at any given moment, I'm always just learning something new. And this notion of growth being the only constant in life and the only way to achieve that is self-agency and empathizing with the people around us, keeping in mind that our greater ultimate purpose in life is not just towards ourselves, but towards the communities around us.
Absolutely.
And serving people that are not our mortal body or those who we hold near and dear. And I think that's such a beautiful notion. And especially in times like these where we're so distant from each other and we need that empathy as the human race to get out of this pandemic in a manner which is, it's hard to find a word, but in a manner that does not take us further apart than we already are and try and bring us closer. And I'm wondering how you have tried to do that in your own life and how that all of these have manifested in your work, personal life, and all of those different aspects.
You know, this whole belief that countries are separate is fundamentally flawed. Remember that poem that we studied in our childhood? It was a poem by John Donne. No man is an island. Do you remember that? I think I have the words here. No man is an island entire of itself. Each is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. When I watched the ticker on the news saying so many deaths, I mean, it's so not nice, you know. So he says, each man's death diminishes me, for I am involved in mankind. Therefore, send not to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. You know what we had lost during the pandemic, even before the pandemic, is this sense of interconnectedness. We were all very arrogant in our achievements. And, you know, I remember that day it was March 24, and I'm a life skills coach. So I'm very passionate about the youth. I believe I can fire the youth's minds to build a better world for tomorrow. I'm very passionate about the world that I will not see, but I know that these jewels of tomorrow will definitely make it a glittering world. So I was very passionately teaching them a lesson on resilience and adapting to change. Little knowing, I was teaching them coping skills, you know, and adversity building skills, muscles. Little did we know that the next day itself, the country would shut down. And the theoretical lesson would become a practical one for them and for me. So what happened was so sudden that we could not, for some time, we couldn't understand what was happening. But I truly think, since you've asked me, I want to tell you, this is my feeling. I truly feel that there's a higher intelligence that was trying to shake up man's arrogance and telling man that the humanity has gone out of humans. So look at what happened. We were cruel with animals, would put them behind bars. We got locked into our homes. You know, everything that we were, you know, we were so cruel to Mother Earth. Mother Earth didn't need us. It's doing very well without us during the lockdown. It's blooming, you know. everything that we thought we could achieve, our designations, our titles, our names, everything became irrelevant. The richest countries brought down to their knees, the humblest of poor struggling with the disease, and the most powerful people also. So for the first time, the world was totally united, unfortunately, in this terrible manner. So I really think there is a higher intelligence that has told us that in all our run after money, after materialism, we've forgotten the one thing that humans are capable of, and that is empathy. And I want to congratulate you on this beautiful title you have for this. Different boats, same
storm.
Same storm.
Same storm.
Rekindling empathy. It's so beautiful, because we are all interconnected. If one person dies in one country, I feel the pain because I should, And then in empathy, Atharva and Eli, I want to tell you, I think there are three kinds of empathy that we should have and should take care of now. First is empathy for others. Buddhism, every day we pray for others. There is a quote in Buddhism, a guidance that says, when you think of your own security, how can you be secure if the whole world is aflame? So we pray for every human being to not go through any suffering. And as you know, this is being practiced in 192 countries. Empathy for others is something we really, really must practice. And look at the heroes who have emerged out of the storm. What comes to my mind is the young nurse who had been a mother, who had just become a mother a month back. She was posted in a COVID-19, what's that called? Hospital. And a woman there gave birth and died. And the baby was crying for milk. Now, while everyone was watching, this young woman instinctively took the child to her breast and gave him the first mother's milk. Now, that's empathy. Think of the actor, in India, who has put in his life's earnings into arranging buses and getting migrants to their homes, far, far away homes. Or that young girl, 15-year-old girl, who carried her ailing, aged father on her bicycle all the way, I think it was 1,200 kilometers away to her home place to get him to safety. That kind of, heroic spirit has come out. So that's empathy for others. And there are many, many examples. There's so many around the world. And then the second I would say is empathy for ourselves. In our busy lives, in chasing deadlines and more money and more opportunities, we had actually forgotten to fill our own cup. Our own cup was empty. How could we pour it out for others? So I would say empathy for self would mean, self-compassion would mean giving yourself a lot of compassion, giving yourself a lot of self-acceptance and a lot of self-care. That is empathy. And we have to take care of ourselves first before we can, take care of others. And the third would be empathy towards the earth. It is really, this calamity has shown us, the pandemic has shown us that we haven't treated the earth right. Mother Earth, Mother Nature, we haven't treated her right. And we should wake up now at least and understand that she does not need us, we do.
Empathy for oneself, empathy for others, and empathy for the earth. Those are all beautiful sentiments, and I think they're so important to be practiced, not just during this time of pandemic, but all the time. And I think you really raise a good point. Those are many things that it seems like in the busyness of the world, most people forgot, especially taking care of oneself. And they say that the work of God is to serve others. And really, when we talk about serving others, you talk about your life's work in serving others. Now, personally, when the pandemic hit, how did life change for you? And how did you adapt to this new normal that we've all been talking about?
Yes. So, Abhay, when the pandemic hit, I was very worried about my students because just 2 days before that, they were sharing with me stories about how difficult it was to live with their parents. And they were having that generation gap feeling. And suddenly, they were locked inside with those very people they consider difficult to live with. Now, when they are in a physical class, they open their hearts out to me and they talk to me. But my problem was digitally, how will they be able to share their innermost feelings? But I must tell you, human beings are the most adaptable creatures. And therefore, overnight, our school, this is a premier school, R.N. Podar School of Mumbai. Uh, all our lessons went online. The students are very tech savvy. And when I took my life skills lesson, I was very scared. I said, it's going to fall flat because it's just going to be a lesson. I won't be able to see their expressions. We have large numbers in class, 70, 75. And at one time, for life skills, there are 100 to 120 students who come. So it is so difficult to personalize, but you will be so surprised. Thank God for the chat box. Thank God for, the personalization. I think I feel it has been an aha moment for me because the children, the students have totally, they've crossed, they have taken away my fears. What I thought was going to be, a flop show turned out to be a very, very intimate exchange of words, fears, anxieties, happiness, everything. So that's the technological challenge that I crossed. So during the pandemic, that made me very, very happy. And life skills during this time suddenly came center stage. So many people, the married, the drifting, the unmarried, they all have issues, emotional issues, and everyone wanted to talk. So everyone connected. And I'm so happy. And I just hope it continues that the stigma that we have about mental problems, mental illness, just goes away. There's there's so much of stigma attached to it, to something that everyone goes through. So, and also, I'll tell you some very happy things happened during this lockdown. People found new talents, they discovered themselves, and they discovered each other. They hadn't had time to sit and talk to their families. My daughter lives about 3 blocks away, and she was very ill at that time. I was not allowed to go out of my house, and she really wanted to hug me. She said, "Mom, I just need a hug." Now that made me so want to cry, And one day what happened is that I was reading a Buddhist study, and our mentor, who is Daisaku Ikeda, I read his words. In that it was written, "Dig beneath your feet and you will find a spring." I did not know what that meant, but I went down into my premises, and guess what? I noticed a fence that was that ran between her blocks and my blocks. So we managed one day. It was a very, very emotional moment. She wanted some special food that I make, and I cooked it. And through that little hole, you know, I passed it to her, and we looked at each other, and I said, honey, I love you. And she said, Mom, I love you so much. We called it the Wagah border. So, you know, whenever she wanted, she would come there and I would come there. We would get emotionally recharged. So yes, we found ways and means to be happy.
Wow. You know, one thing that I'm always incredibly fascinated by is human tenacity to innovate and adapt in the toughest of times, to find a way to do things. It's cliche when we say where there is a will, there is a way, but I think this pandemic has taught us that if there is a will, you will find a way. And your story only is a testament to that very notion. And you spoke about new discoveries and things that were earlier on the sidelines and are now taking center stage. So speaking of new discoveries, I think we'll now invite Eli back into the conversation and see what he has to say.
Hi,
Welcome,
everybody.
Eli.
Thank you so much. We have to have a talk after this Zoom call because I think I need to buy some film rights off of you. Your story has me floored. And I have to say, so two things that I've been thinking of. First is, I don't think we've had a more fashionable guest on our show.
I agree, hands down.
And so I must compliment you on your entire aesthetic happening here. I think your physical aesthetic parallels my Instagram. But I might just have to take a screenshot.
This is your next post, Eli.
Please
send me
a picture of this. You handsome boys. Yeah, I would love a picture with you all.
Oh, you're gonna boost our egos. We're young university students that don't need our egos boosted right now. But I do appreciate it. Well, the second thing is we've done 5 of these conversations now. And I think, without doubt for me, you are the person that I would die to just go have a beer with. Because I think you seem to have the most, I guess this is it. And I'm sure Atharv and Abhay can relate to this. As university students, I think we're all going through some form of a crisis of identity right now, as we try and discover who we are and how we relate to other people. And so I think a lot of what you've said, I've been hanging on to your every word because I think that there's some very valuable guidance there in terms of how to go about living and treating people around you. But I guess there's a quote from the great British comedian Rowan Atkinson where he says, I enjoy the performance more than the joke. I think it is, I usually enjoy the performer and his attitude. And it is the attitude with which humor is told, which I enjoy. And I'm just thinking, that philosophy, that it's the way that you say things is something that really resonates with the way that you've been talking to us. And I just think, being a motivational speaker, the positivity that you radiate is something that I have huge admiration for. But does it not feel like a tremendous amount of work to sustain that level of positive energy?
So, in the beginning, when I had no hair, no eyebrows, no eyelashes, and
but still
jewelry. Yeah, I always make a fashion statement because I want to break stereotypes always. So it was difficult to explain to people, there's a lot of grimness that surrounds the word cancer, especially breast cancer. Women don't talk about, there's a concept called shame, which is very deeply ingrained. And the mission of my life is to tell every woman that you are precious and you're not a silent suffering goddess. Please drop everything and go for your cancer screening right now. And there is no shame attached to showing your body, because the earlier you get detected, the longer you live, And to men, I always say, please redefine what being a macho man means. You take the woman in your house right today to the screening center and ensure that her health becomes your top priority. So all this, when I was trying to speak on stage with the bald head and everything, it took a lot of courage. But then I thought maybe my life has this purpose, to give courage, to pass on courage to others. And I definitely want now also to live a life that is full of compassion and full of courage. Otherwise, it will have been just wasted years. And the crisis will have been a wasted crisis if we don't become better human beings. So yes, sometimes that courage I had to fake. But after that, I think I made a decision in my head, Eli, that, happiness has to be generated from inside. And my life has to be the message to everyone. And then if I can give courage to even one suffering woman, because I don't know whether I should talk about this on this forum, but in India, it's actually in the rural parts, it's a social evil. So there's this elderly woman who came to me and she said that, ma'am, my husband, he threw me out of my home because he said, I've got the cancer infection. And promptly he got himself a younger woman. So, that enraged me a lot. So that is the social evil I'm fighting against. And the first step is to create awareness that cancer is not a death sentence. And, you can still, that's why I don't call myself a survivor. I don't call myself a cancer beater also. I call myself a cancer thriver. So, I always, as I told you, I began to view life from the lens of joy. And once I made that decision, because every adversity in your life, the decision has to be first made in your head. You have to win the battle in your head. Once you win that battle in the head, the body will comply. So all the books I have written after that are about emotional empowerment. A lot has been done in medical advancement, but very little has been done in the area of emotional empowerment. So by my physical presence or my books reaching people, when they can create that joy, it gives me a tremendous amount of joy, and it gives me validation that my life has been worth it. In fact, I've asked death to come to me by appointment only.
If it's not on the calendar, it cannot enter, right?
No, I'm too busy living life. There's so much.
Absolutely, for sure.
Sure.
Calendar is
my own
overflowing.
terms. And so the emotional empowerment that you now thrive in, was that despite the suffering that you've been through, or was that because of the suffering that you've been through?
Both. Suffering is growth. And if you don't grow with the suffering, you've wasted its coming into your life. And suffering leads to growth, and growth leads to joy. So if you follow that path, you will have fulfilled your coming into this world as a human being. Because the ultimate purpose of life is to be joyous. I'd like to tell you something, Eli. Happiness is not a life without problems. Life is like an ECG chart. It's ups and downs. A problem-free life is a fairy tale. It doesn't happen. So happiness is not a life without problems. It is a life in which you've learned how to handle those problems. So think of a mountaineer. A mountaineer or a hiker, he's been practicing a full year to climb and climb and climb. When the time comes, he says, that's the mountain. I'm going to climb it and I'm going to see the breathtaking view from the top. Whereas someone who has not done any exercise, he will be huffing and panting and he or she will give up. So we have to do inner preparation. Instead of looking outside, the whole focus should be inside. Trust me, we humans are made, we are more powerful than we can imagine. A person like me, who is a coward, who is afraid of a lizard. You know what lizards are, boys? Lizards and cockroaches, anything with 6 legs, I'm very afraid of. All right?
That's a good rule to have in life.
Yeah. But the moment an adversity strikes, I do the battle cry and I say, come, this is the opportunity I was waiting for. Yeah. Because I have prepared myself internally to make it valuable and to probably, make the going easier for others. Mm-hmm. So that has always been my goal.
So when it comes to the first rule of empathy, the first form of empathy, which is empathy for others that you outlined, it seems to me, I would suggest that it's not about praying for others not to suffer, but rather it's praying for others to learn from that suffering and to grow through that. Well, that's
because
fantastic.
Suffering is inevitable.
Yeah. And then you emerge from those experiences with some form of strength that you couldn't have otherwise.
Yes. So you emerge with 3 things: wisdom, courage, and absolute strength. Yeah. Inner strength. And inner strength can come only through inner transformation. Yeah. And in my kind of Buddhism, you can pray for a Mercedes or a BMW if that gives you happiness. It's a very real Buddhism. It is not about going up on a mountain, forsaking the world. No, it is working for humanity, being soldiers of humanity. Like in the pandemic, I've been going out, I've been giving food to others. I don't talk about these, I don't like to talk about these things, but I have not been useless to my fellow beings. And that is the purpose that each human being should have in life. Because leading a self-centered life is not the purpose of being born a human. We were placed here, A, to find absolute happiness, not relative happiness, and B, to help our fellow men. That is something that we forgot. And this pandemic has come as a reminder that we need to help each other. We are inextricably interconnected. White, black, brown, whatever the color, whatever the creed, whatever the social standing. You suffer, I suffer.
That's beautiful. And one thing that really stood out for me, everything was fantastic, but the idea of knowing the cognizance that suffering is inevitable, and the only thing that one can do then is to learn from it and grow. And I feel like this pandemic is probably the best opportunity that any of us are going to get in all of our lifetimes. Absolutely. Hopefully it's not like this pandemic, but who knows? But it is here right in front of us, and the best thing that we can do is make ourselves useful and serve a greater purpose that is not centered around us. And Absolutely. Learn from this suffering and spread that love and joy that we seek and we derive from these experiences, not just with ourselves and with our loved ones, but with everybody and anybody that we can.
You said it. You've said it. Love is the biggest emotion that we should flood the world with. It should be so strong that we drive away all hate, all sexual violence, all man-made boundaries, and create a world where there's only one religion of humanity. So
it's all about coming together.
Yes, everyone coming together. You youngsters, we adults have messed up the world. We've divided it into so many small, despicable tribes and whatever you call it, emotions. I'm sure you will do the cleaning up act, because whoever is above wants you to be the soldiers of tomorrow. We were just, who was that? Khalil Gibran, who said that we are the bows from which you arrows have been shot into the house of tomorrow, which we will not visit. So, but we can tell you our anguish, we can tell you our dreams, we can tell you our pains, that you will go and create tomorrow. A bit of the old values, a bit of the present ones, the right thinking ones, and whatever the future brings, I'm sure you will be able to create a much, much better world after this pandemic. In fact, it is my prayer each day. I pray, sorry if I'm just telling you too much about this, but we inhabit 10 worlds: hell, hunger, anger, animality. These are the lower worlds. And many people just come into the human shape and form, and they finish an entire lifetime living these worlds. But then above that, you go into heaven, which is not that heaven, rapture, learning, realization, and then bodhisattva, where you start helping others and it gives you joy to live for others. And finally, Buddhahood. Buddhahood is where you reach the highest potential that a human being is capable of. So each day I pray that Mother Earth realizes her Buddhahood, that humankind reaches its highest potential of being human, because we have actually forgotten how to be human. So this is a reminder. And after we've washed our hands enough and remained isolated enough, dipped deeply enough into ourselves to find the resources that are right inside us, I'm sure, and it is my hope and prayer, that we will come out into a better world where we start valuing each other more, and also hold on to some values like slowing down the pace of our lives, and really cherishing each other beyond the skin color, beyond the geographical barriers. What a beautiful world it would be. I would love to visit this world again after you people have cleaned it up.
There's a
100%.
documentary that I saw. I don't remember, it was a while ago and I don't remember exactly what it was, but one of the points that they made was to live a life where every 15 minutes a bell rings, and wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you just take a moment, you stop your conversation, you stop doing whatever you're writing, and you just take a breath and look around and listen every 15 minutes. And you genuinely start to appreciate the world around you. And I think there's nothing like that,
Beautiful. I had to do a lot of inner work before I could jump from the victim to the victor mode, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of self-dialogue that you have to do, a lot of cleaning up, throwing out the pettiness of human life that we all are filled with, and it's a difficult journey, but it is very, very fulfilling. I promise you. I mean, I'm still a work in progress. None of us has reached Buddhahood, but at least we consciously try. And about empathy, I can just tell you, your title tells me, when I was a child, I used to sing a song. I don't know if you heard that. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 merrily. Life is but a dream.
But a dream.
And then I grew up and realized life is not a It's a storm. It's a storm. In 1 minute, it's calm and then it's furious. So you have to have the tools. You have to have the tools to handle life. You have to wear the battle jacket. And you can't just jump into the hurly-burly of life unarmed. That is why life skills training, that's the coaching I give the kids. That if this happens, what do you do? If this happens, so a whole training is required. And Also, I would like to say about empathy, each one of us may be having different boats. Some may be wooden, some may be clanky and rusty, some may be tethering over, some may be the Titanic, and some may be having designer boats. But we are all in the same storm. Can you imagine?
Mm.
So that is a huge realization. And guess what? How do we come out of the storm? The only lighthouse has to be that of empathy.
Beautiful.
Wow. This
We
whole
are all
conversation
in
is
the same storm.
it's fascinating how did you write this down? Because if you're coming up with this spontaneously, then that is fascinating.
I wanted to write this down. I didn't know what you would ask me.
Oh wow. So
Sure.
the fact that this is spontaneous is just so fascinating.
If you had given me the questions earlier, I would have come across as a very wise human.
Oh, don't worry about that. I think you ticked that box off a while back.
I really think that with your wisdom and mentorship and the mentorship of the generation above us, we can kindle that empathy and that humanity to make our world a better place moving forward, to care for ourselves, to care for one another, and to care for our planet. And really, despite us all being in the same storm, and really because that we're all in the same storm, as you said, we will get out of this stronger and better and more connected as people.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it is, again, on behalf of Atharv, Eli, and myself, thank you so much for this incredible conversation. I think this was the epitome of what this entire podcast aimed to be. Different boat, same storm, kindling empathy during a global pandemic. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so very much for having me on your show, and love you guys. Let's rekindle empathy and make this a beautiful planet once again. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
this was our episode number 5 of Different Boat, Same Storm. We'll be back next week, same time, different guest, different boat, same storm.